Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. We hope that you are all well and safe during these hard times. Today, we are presenting our third webinar of the July series. It's called Measurements, Sketch to Scale Tools, and Viewports. Before we jump in, let me go over some logistics first. All the lines are muted so that we can hear the presenter. Please send us all your questions via the chat box or the questions box so that we can answer it as we go or at the end. This webcast is being recorded for future viewing, so you don't have to waste time taking notes. You can just pay attention and then later you can review it. We do have Bluebeam training, so now is a good time to get review training. If you are preparing for that, this is a great time because some of you guys might be experiencing some downtime. Let us know if you have any questions about it. We can do customized, we can do it online. You don't have to come here. So call us or email us if you have any questions. And without any more delay, it's my pleasure to introduce our AEC technical specialist and Bluebeam certified instructor, Ari Redman. Ari, take it away.
Thank you, Raquel. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. My name is Ari, and today we're going to be going over measurements, sketch to scale tools, and viewports, and we'll look at scales, accurate measurements, and dynamic fills while we do so. So I'm really excited to show you guys this webinar. We're going to go over some great topics. So not only will we look at scales, but we'll look at how to calibrate our pages, and we can use preset scales if we already know the scale. Then we'll use our measuring tools and learn how they all work. We'll look at dynamic fill and create them, and we can use them to create areas of rounded corners and rounded edges, along with other different kinds of measurement tools. We're also going to be looking at sketch to scale tools. They're really, really useful tools that allow us to draw accurately as we draw, so we don't have to modify our measurements after the fact. And we'll look at viewports. We'll see what happens when a viewport is created in a file that used to be a CAD or BIM file, and then it had a viewport in it. And we'll look at how to create them and manage them as well. So without further ado, I'm going to stop showing my webcam so that you guys can see my screen. Let's switch to Bluebeam Revu and let's do it. All right. So our measurement tools can be found by going to the tools dropdown, excuse me, and then going to measure. And we can start off by calibrating. So let's calibrate first. It's asking us now to select 2 points to calibrate. So we can click OK. Let's find an existing measurement, and we can use that existing measurement to determine what the scale is for the sheet. So if we didn't know that it was 1/8 of an inch equals a foot, by the way, you can see your scale by looking on the bottom right here, then you can determine what it is if you have an existing measurement. So let's click on this point first, and let's use this point right here. And now Bluebeam is asking us, how long was that measurement? So in this blue box that's already highlighted, we can say that this measurement is 30 feet. And so 30 feet equals 3.75 inches, essentially. Another way to say that is 1/8 of an inch equals a foot, if you do the math. So we'll just use a preset scale because it's a little bit cleaner to use. And either way, you can still change your precision. So my precision is set to 1/16 right now. I could set it to 1/32, or if I wanted to go by whole inches, I can set it to an inch. I like to make sure that I'm pretty accurate, so I like to set mine at around a pretty high decimal or a high fraction. Then we can set our scale for multiple pages at once. We could do the current page, but if we set it for all of our pages, we can save a lot of time. And so right now, I'll just leave that. I've already set my scale for this page, so I'm going to click cancel. Once you calibrate, then you can make measurements. You're not really allowed to make measurements until you calibrate, because then what will the measurements be used for, of course? So you could, of course, calibrate or set your scale in a preset way. There's another way to look at some measurement tools and options, and we can right here on the right side. So once I expand this, we can then change our scale whenever we need to. We don't have to calibrate and go through the calibration dialog again. So here's our drop down. We have access to a lot of different kinds of scales. We can use architectural scales, surveying scales, engineering scales. They're all here, lots of different presets. And we could always do custom, and we can make any scale that we want here in custom, of course. And the same options apply, where we can apply it to page range, and we can change our precision on the fly whenever we need to. Also in the measurements panel, just so you guys can see, there's a viewports area right down here. So this is where we can manage our viewports. We're going to go into that a little bit later, but just so you know, it's here. So that'll be a little sneak preview of what's to come. All right, so let's look at some of the measurement options that we have. We can look at those options once again by going to the tools dropdown and measure, and we can see them all in this list. Some of them also have keyboard shortcuts. So if I held Shift and Alt and L, I could do a length measurement if I wanted to. Dynamic Fill happens to have the royal key of J. Very, very fancy tool. No wonder it has just a simple key for it. It's really, really useful. We can also find our measurement tools in the measurements panel, and some of them are hidden right now. So if you ever see an arrow drop down like this, you can click on it, and here are the other measurement tools that were not visible due to size. And I can expand my side panel by mousing over this edge right here. I can make it bigger or smaller, so if I need it to be big for something, I can basically expand to get more of my tools. So I'll keep mine at about that size. That should be good. All right, so let's go through the measurement tools. So firstly, we can use the length tool. It's a very simple tool, but extremely useful and very common. By the way, you might have noticed that this viewport right here activated as soon as I activated my measurement tool. And so another sneak preview as to how viewports work in Revu. Let's go into that a little bit later. So let's make a measurement and let's make sure that our scale is correct. So if I was to measure this segment from here to here, it looks like it's 30 feet. Now, I've set my default to a specific length measurement, and what I've done with this is, I'm going to go to properties and show you guys, I've actually hidden a lot of information about the measurement. I don't want to see the caption, which is this option right here in properties. So I went to my properties while the measurement tool is still active and while this is highlighted, and show caption is turned off right now. If I turn it back on, now we can see visibly that it's 30 feet, but we don't need to. We can turn it off, and in properties, in this white box right here, it's telling us that the measurement is 30 feet. So there's a lot of different ways that we can see how long our measurement is. Another thing we could do is we can click on the measurement and we can look in our markups list, and we can see under comments that it's 30 feet, and it has lots of information. Measurements and markups are very similar in that they can be saved in our tool chest, for example, and they can be visible in our markups list and quantified when we need to. We can create hyperlinked summary reports to keep track of all of our measurements and markups at the same time. So measurements and markups work in those similar ways. To add a measurement to your tool chest, for example, you would right-click on top of it, add to tool chest, and select whichever tool chest you want, just like we did when we did the markups webinar last week. So let's use the default measuring tool because this one is a little bit odd. I've actually been doing my own measurements with this tool. So let me show you guys what the default one looks like. I might have changed the default, so that means that you won't be able to see it, but that's okay. Yeah, I have. I've actually changed it to this. So let me show you a measurement tool that's a little bit more visible. So I'll make it right here. Here's my length tool from here to here. And there we go. This is typically what your measurement will look like. Usually it'll be the color red with a different font. You can change your different arrow schemes. So for example, I have properties open while I make this. And now I can change all kinds of information about my measurement tool and change how it looks. So if I change its color, it's going to change the arrows themselves. The fill color is actually going to be the fill behind the text. Actually, in this case, it is not. That's quite interesting. And the text color right here can be changed to orange as well. So this is how we can change all of our information. Let's actually go and undo that a couple times. I want to keep that nice magenta view. It's very nice, it pops out. Now we can also, before I continue to change how this measurement looks, it's a little bit hard to see it because it's on top of the existing measurement that was flattened onto the page. So let's move this up. A couple of ways of doing so is we can click on this yellow grip right here and we can move it up, and it still maintains its origin points where the length measurement started. If we wanted to, we could actually move the entire thing up altogether by basically holding Shift and then clicking on the measurement and moving it like this. And now I can move it directly up, and there it is. So this is how we can move our measurements in many different ways. Another thing we could do is we can move the text independently from the length measurement as well. So I can click on the length measurement, can hold Shift. If I click on the text, not on the lines, but on the text itself, now I can move it above the leader line and I can let it look like that. Now, an odd thing that's visible is this caption leader line. So wherever the text is, there's going to be a line that follows it in this really funky way. Could be useful for some applications. But in our case, this isn't really standard when it comes to architectural engineering or construction documents. So in properties, we're going to turn that off. Show caption leader line, we can uncheck it, and there it is. Now our text is right above the dimension, and this looks like a typical architectural length measurement. Now that we can see our length measurement, let's look in properties and let's modify it a little bit. We can change its opacity just like we could do with a markup, so the measurement can be seen through a little bit. We can change the line widths to make it a little bit bigger and a little bit smaller if we wanted to. The style does not have to be solid. We can change it to any of these dash styles if we wanted to. And we can change the arrowheads. So the start arrowhead could be this nice little end of an arrow, and now we kind of have an arrow suited for a bow and arrow, but in this case, that's a little silly. Instead, we can actually change these to architectural ticks, so we can change both of them, and that's also another way to put measurements on a sheet that's pretty typical in the AEC industry. So let's change that back to these arrowheads that are not filled in. By default, Revu is using these filled in ones, and if you think about it, they take up a little bit of ink when you have to print them. So let's not worry about that. Although now that most things are digital, we don't have to print too much, right guys? Okay, we can also change our font for our length measurements. So mine is Times New Roman right now. We can change from any of these fonts that are available in the Windows library, and we can import fonts if we wanted to as well. And we can change our font size, of course. So by default, it's 12, mine's at 14. Of course, we can change whether or not the dimension is bold, italics, underlines. There's all kinds of information that we can modify on this. And our length measurements also work with our custom columns. So we can perform cost analysis for floor areas and wall areas using these length measurements. I actually have one that I've been using to do a cost analysis for the wall. And what I've done with this is, I showed this a little bit last week, but I'll show you guys again. I have taken this and I have, first of all, in my measurements panel, I have made sure that this has a depth. So the wall is 9 long, roughly, and it has a depth of 10 feet. And so if I go back to properties and I scroll down, all I have to do is make sure that I choose a material. I've already set this in my columns. And therefore, due to this material, the cost of this wall overall should be $275.59. And that's basically a wall area cost analysis. And if I change the material, you can see that the cost is changing right here. So that's quite useful. Now, I'll show you guys how that works in the custom columns area. We've already looked at this a little previously. So let me turn off my markups list for now so that we don't get confused. Okay, so let's go back to our original length measurement. And this one's looking pretty good at this point. So I think we can move on to the other measuring tools. Let's go to our tools dropdown, measure. We can make poly lengths, which are very similar to length. The difference is that you can basically create a line with multiple segments, just like this. And when you're ready, you can just press enter, and the segment is complete. And with these poly lengths, you can also click on them and you can show their captions and segment values if you wanted to or not. So I can turn that off. So now the overall caption, which is showing the overall length of this polyline, can be turned off independently from the individual lines or the individual segments that make up the entire polyline. If I turn off segment values, now it's just a line. The good news is that I can still get information about this line. Here in this white area, we can see the overall length. And in our markups list, let me deselect it and click it again because my markups list wasn't open. You want to make sure that it's open first and then you click on a measurement. So now it'll take you there. What happens is if it's closed and you have it selected and you open the markups list, it will not be selected automatically. So let's click on it there. There we go. And here under comments, the same thing that we saw with the length measurement, we can see the overall measurement length right here. Let's turn our segment values on and we can turn our caption on as well. Why not? So of course, we can change the opacity and line width of this just like we did before. Lots of different options here, very similar to the regular length measurement and similar to other markups. So there's a lot of different ways that we can customize these measurements. And this color and this font is default for the poly length measurement along with the other measuring tools. All right, so that's poly length. Let's look at the next one. Area. Area is very simple. There's a couple of ways to use area. We could select in an area and we can make a freeform area. So I'm just clicking without holding my left mouse button. I'm just clicking and releasing immediately. And I can make any shape area that I want. Now, to finish the area, you might notice that there's this dark line right here that is basically, it's not an actual line, but it's ready to finish the area. So if I press enter, it does so automatically, and it connects the endpoint and the origin point. So we have our area. Now, let's say that we wanted to make a typical rectangular area. We can go back to our area tool. You'll also notice that I have my measuring tools right here. So I'm going to be using them here instead of going to tools and measure, because that takes a little bit of time. So here's our area tool. And let's make an area, let's see, a nice square area would probably be median 214. That's a good room. And oops, I didn't hold the mouse button, so let me make that one more time. I'm going to click and hold, and while I'm holding, I'm actually going to zoom out with my middle mouse wheel so I can do both at the same time. And as you can see, now I have the area measurement ready to go, and I just have to make sure I snap it to this point right here. And perfect, I've quickly determined that the area of median 214 is 100.4688. Now, you saw that the text was in front of the other text. So just like with the length measuring tool, I held Shift and I can click on my text and move it anywhere I want, independently from the area. If I don't hold Shift and I click on the text and try to move it, I'll move the entire area like this. And we don't want to do that. So that's basically how that works. So that's the area tool in a very simple nutshell. You can always select these tools and you can see more properties about them. For areas, we can change a lot of things. We now have fill opacity and we have fill colors. So if I want a nice background for this, but I don't want it to be too dark, I can change the opacity for the fill in particular to be a nice light 30 or 20%. That looks quite nice, actually. Now we can see past it and we can see the door right here. Then, of course, we can change the segment style, so we don't have to have solid lines like before. We can make them dashed, so we can have an area looking like this. And a good example of these areas is here are the areas that I used. I've customized mine to look like this. So I have different settings from the default for this. I have my fill opacity set to 15. All right, so that's the area tool. Let's look at the next one. We have the diameter tool. We have center radius, so basically we can calculate diameters and radii. Here they are right here. So we have our radius tool and diameter tool right here. Very nice, very simple tools, very effective. And let's continue. We can do a 3-point radius, and we can calculate angles, volumes. Volumes are very similar to areas. All you have to do is set the depth, and you can calculate the cubic feet. So I'm going to make a volume right now. When you make a volume for the first time, it's going to say 0 cubic feet because there is no depth set for this. We set our depth, once again, just like how we saw with the wall cost analysis, the wall area cost analysis, it's in the same spot. So we selected our area tool. We're going to go to our measurements panel, and here's depth. Let's set that to 5 feet. And based on the area, now we're going to multiply it by the depth. And there it is, 4,300 cubic feet for this size and this depth. And there you go. And so the volume tool can be quite handy and very, very easy to modify if you need to, based on the depth and or height of your object. Back in our measurements area, we can make polygon and ellipse cutouts, and the count tool is quite cool. Let's look at the count tool. This one's quite nice. We can start to categorize different objects. So we can start to categorize our doors, for example. So if I wanted to check how many doors there are in this area of the building, I can start to place checks next to these door labels. And let's just place 3 for now. And then when we're done, we can either press the escape key or enter. Actually, enter, if you notice, does absolutely nothing. So we'll have to press the escape key. Sometimes enter will end a command, and sometimes you have to press escape to cancel out of it. So we have our 3 counts ready to be used. Let's click on one of them. You'll notice that when I select one of them, each one has a grip next to it. The difference is that the one that I selected will change its grip color. So right now this grip color is yellow because I selected it. If I select this one, it becomes yellow, and this one became green. So these 2 are green because I didn't actually click on them, but when I click on this one, now this one's yellow and these 2 are green. That's good to know because you want to make sure that if you're going to modify a specific check in your count tool, you want to see which one you're actually clicking on. So we're going to click on the middle one. And the count tool is quite cool because let's say that you counted something and you want to resume your count, or you want to delete a count in the middle of your count. All you have to do is right click on top of the tool, and you have all of these specific options for the count tool. You can resume the count. So right now, if I click on that, I can make my 4th check. Let's make it right around here is pretty good. There we go. And I'm done, so I can press escape, and now I've resumed my count. And let's say that that was a mistake. I don't want this check anymore, but if I press the delete key right now, the entire count tool goes away. So we don't want that. We want to delete only one portion of the count tool. So we can click on our check, we can right click on it, and we can either split count or split all. If we split all, then that means each individual check in the count tool has now become independent from the others. So that's quite nice, but let's not split all. We just want to split one of them. So based on the one that I select, if I split count, that means this one is separated, but the other three that I did not click on are still part of the same count tool. So let's try that one more time. I'm going to undo what I've done. Whoops. I'm trying to print. Look at that. And let's click on this one in the middle right here. Right click, split count. So now this one is independent, and these three, 1, 2, and 3, are together still. Very nice. Let's undo that to keep our counts back to where they were. Excellent. And we can always reset the caption position. So if we need to, we can make sure that our caption for our count tools is moved. We don't have a caption right now, so there's no need to worry about that. And there's lots of different ways that we can modify this. In our measurements panel, you can also see that the count tool has a lot of information here, and we can start to modify that. And what we can do with our count tool as well is I'll show you guys how we can modify the icon. We can go to our properties area, and count has very specific properties for it. So instead of a check, I can use many different kinds of shapes. So I can use a triangle, change its opacity to make it a little bit lighter, and that way we can see the count tool, but we can also see below it a little bit, right at 50%. Very nice. We can change its shape in multiple ways. We can use a shape from our tool chest if we wanted to, so it doesn't have to be any of the default ones. And that's it. So that's basically how to use the count tool in a manual sense. I'll show you guys how to use it in an automatic way with the search function pretty soon. I know that we're not going to specifically cover that today, but I'll show it to you guys because it's very related to measuring and counting. So before we get into that, let's look back into our tools and measuring options. And we have dynamic fill. Before we get into it, let me check the PowerPoint, make sure I'm not skipping anything. Yep, we are going right from measuring tools to dynamic fill. You know what? I think I'll show you guys how to search for different objects and apply a count tool automatically to them. So let's do so. We have a few objects we can use, and let's search for them. How we do so is we go to our magnifying glass right here on the right side, and we have text search. So if I wanted to, I can look for specific text and I could easily modify it. Let's actually do that now. It looks like the word storage is used quite a bit, so let's search for it. I want to make sure that I'm counting all my different storage units. So I'm going to type in storage, and I'm making sure that I'm searching pages. If I wanted to, I could also search markups. So markups with the word storage would be searched for. In this case, I don't want to see markups. I just want to see what's already flattened to the page. And I'm going to click search. Now it's processing. It is already processed pretty quickly. It found 20 results. Look at that. Lots of different options. And it looks like some of the results might be in my summary report that I made earlier. That's okay. So I can click on this first option right here, and it will highlight the option. Let's say that I don't know where it is, and I'm looking for it. So I can just go and navigate somewhere, zoom in on a blank area or on a random area of the page, and select one of them. And now it doesn't zoom in and put the object in the center of your screen. It actually will find the object and put it to the edge of your screen. It's a little bit of an odd choice that they made to do that, but that's how it works, just so you guys can see. So whenever I click on these storages, it's showing them and highlighting them, but it's not centering them on your screen. So now that we have all of these storages, let's actually select the first 4. And with these 4, I want to apply some actions to them. So we can click on this lightning bolt, this check options button right here, and we can start to do some fun things. And one of the things is apply a count measurement to checked. So I'm going to apply a check to all the storages. And there it is, right dead center in the text. I've put a check on top of all the words that have storage. That's a great way that we can use the count tool. The highlight option is also there. So if I highlight checked, I can also highlight all of this text. That's a little thing to show you guys, even though it's not 100% relevant for measurements, still quite useful. The same thing applies to visual search. I'm not going to show it because it takes time, but I could get rectangle on top of any object. I can get a preview of it. I'll just show you really quick with this little object right here. And I can find other objects that are similar. Even if there's extra lines on top of them, it'll look for the overall object depending on my sensitivity. So I keep my sensitivity relatively low to allow for a bit of room for error and to get more options and to get more of search results. If my sensitivity was high, I'd be looking for the exact same object. And if there were any other lines interfering, it would not count that as the object. Even though it's 99% close, a sensitivity all the way at the top would mean that it would not be picked up. So there's different ways that you can manage your sensitivity with the image search. So let's not get into that too crazy right now. We've actually made a blog about that, so you guys can go check it out in our blog a little bit later. Okay, so finally, let's look at my favorite measuring tool. I think it's almost everybody's favorite measuring tool. It is called dynamic fill. Let me clear the way of these measurements, and let's look at dynamic fill. It's really, really awesome. So let's find an office to use it in. I happen to like this one, but you know what? I think I'll do a different one today just to show you how it works. It's quite cool. Let's do this one right here, Office 213. I'm going to get rid of this markup because sometimes markups get in the way of our fills. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go to our layers instead of deleting the markup. So I'm going to go to layers right here. And this markup, we have clicked on it here, and let's see if it is in one of our layers. We can find that out by going to our markups list dropdown, columns, turning on the layer column. Let's see if I can find it. There it is, the second one from the top. And it looks like this one is on the layer of coordination comments. So if I turn all those off, they're now gone, but they're not deleted. So if you need them again, you can just turn them on. So now you have a sneak preview of how layers work. Pretty easy stuff. By the way, you can assign markups to layers very easily. You can just click on a markup, right click, and then layer is right here, and you can choose any existing layer, or you can create a new one on the fly whenever you need to. I actually made one from my own markups, so just so you guys can see, if I turn off my markups, they're all gone. So all the ones in this corner that I made customized for myself. And now they're back. So dynamic fill. We have work to do with dynamic fill, quite a fun tool. So let's get it ready. We have tools, measure, and dynamic fill found right here. Dynamic fill is now loading. Once the bar loads, we can start to modify it. So dynamic fill works in some interesting ways. Actually, before we continue with this dynamic fill area, let me show you how to modify the preferences so that dynamic fill always works the way you want it to. You can go to the review dropdown, click on preferences, go to tools and then measure. And here, these are measuring options, but not really. They're actually all options for dynamic fill in particular. So you can change the dynamic fill input. If you change the DPI, it'll become a little bit more accurate depending on how high or low your DPI is. So I set mine to the highest. By default, it's set to 300. So 400 might assist you guys if your dynamic fill is not picking up on certain lines. Then you have this option of momentarily hiding markups while the fill is going. I don't like that, so I'm going to uncheck that. I don't want to momentarily hide markups. I want to see what markups there are. So that way I don't have to worry about drawing on top of other markups. Then I changed my fill size to 50%. You can modify it with these arrows, or you can type inside the box. My fill speed is set to 30. That's pretty fast. Fill color is already set to green, and the boundary is set to blue. That's perfect. And the boundary size, I set it to the smallest amount, which is at 25%. And I'll show you guys why I did that very soon. The edge sensitivity is set to high. High works really well. Low tends to pass through vector lines very quickly, so it's hard to use the low sensitivity. So we're going to use the high sensitivity. And let's click OK. Good. Now we can use dynamic fill, and we can modify our settings on the fly by clicking on this button right here, this little abacus button. And you can see that the same settings that I applied are set. The boundary size has a visual bug, even though it says 100% right here. If I click on the dot, it automatically sets it back to the percent that it's supposed to be. Bit of a visual bug, that's okay. And the fill size is fine, even though it says, 50 is good and 30, so there's no visual bug there. Everything here is ready to go, so we are good to go. Now, let's make a fill before we do a boundary, and I'll show you why boundaries are so useful. I'm just going to click and hold, and the fill will magically find lines and stop where they are. Now, this is good. The problem is that part of this room includes the part that the door is kind of blocking right here. So I need to make a boundary to tell the fill to go to the boundary and pass the door frame, and also pass this 203 circle. Because if I just make a fill here, it fills in the circle and it will not go past. Every single line right now will count as a barrier to the fill. So I need to clear my fill, so I can click on this little trash can icon and I can clear the fill independently. I can clear boundaries independently, or I can clear them all at the same time. Now my fill is reset. Let's make our boundary first. So this is my boundary tool. I'm now going to click. Now what I could do is I can click from out the inside parts here, but what I like to do is I like to go inside the wall a little bit. This also tells Revu that the wall itself is supposed to be the permanent part of the boundary, and that these portions to the inside of the wall are not to be used. So in order to make a straight line, I'm going to hold shift while I do it. That activates the 4 cardinal directions and 45-degree angles. Quite nice. So I'm zooming in while holding shift to make sure I get a nice boundary right there. Little gaps like this don't make much of a difference. You can have a few gaps, and I'll show you guys how to fix that after the fact. My boundary is nearly ready. I just have to click enter, and there it is. So our boundary is ready. Now the fill is ready. What I have to do now is I can't just click and hold on the inside. I have to make sure that I physically move my cursor into the circles, the circle with 213 and the door itself. So I'm going to click and hold, move inside there, go back to the middle so that I don't focus on that area too much. And then when I see that the fill is done, I just let go of my mouse. Now my fill is looking really, really nice and accurate. And it's okay that this portion here is a little bit inaccurate. We're going to be fixing that right now. And sometimes Revu automatically understands that this small little portion should just be a continuous straight line. So let's now see what we can do with this fill. The fill is not done yet. It's just a fill. This is not a markup. It's just a visual aid to help you create a specific markup from the fill. So here's the create button right here, or the create dialog, so to speak. And we can choose so many different options. Let me click once so I can show you guys. There we go. We can make spaces. We can make polygon markups, area measurements, poly lengths, perimeter measurements, and volume measurements. And these drop downs next to each one allow us to modify the settings and or choose specific options that we already have saved in our tool chest. So if I click on the drop down next to area, I can choose the existing concrete one that I saved in my tool chest. And I have these other areas that I've used estimation tools for. So I can easily make the area that I want to without having to make the default one first. The default one's a little bit easier to see right now, so we're going to probably just use that one. But yes, you can see that I have all these different poly lengths to choose from. And the fun part is we don't just have to make one at a time. If I wanted to make an area and a volume, no problem. I can do them both at the same time. I can technically do all of these options at the same time. The problem with doing that is each one will be its own independent markup, and they're going to be a little bit messy on top of each other. So right now we're just going to do area for cleanliness sake. And when we're ready, we can just click apply. And there it is. Our area has now been created. Now I can move our text independently from the area to the center like that. That looks nice. And we have to fix a couple of issues with this area. This one actually came out quite good, quite close to being perfect. But this part right here is not really perfect. So because my boundary wasn't perfect, it made these extra grips and it moved the area a little bit. So how can I fix this? It's not too hard. The shift key is such a useful key when you're using Bluebeam Revu. Your left hand is not going to sit there and do nothing while using this program. I'll tell you that. And any of our CAD and BIM experts will know that for sure as well. So now I can hold shift and I can mouse over a grip. And you can see that there's a minus sign next to my cursor. If I'm not on top of a grip, but I'm holding shift, I have a plus sign instead. So I can make new grips just like that, or I can delete grips. So I'm going to get rid of these two because they are totally inaccurate. I don't need this one either. I just need the corner one. And let's get rid of these two as well. There we go. So let's check and make sure that our area is complete. From corner to corner, we're good up there. This corner is great. All of these picked up some interesting grips. We don't really need them. We just need to make sure we're going from corner to corner. This grip is pretty good, so we don't need this one. And now look what it did. It automatically filled in this round area pretty accurately, actually. We could modify these grips further. So I could actually move them and I could center them a little bit just to make them a little bit more perfect. But it's not really necessary because it really accurately found that corner quite nicely. And there we go. Our area is now looking great. By the way, if you noticed, our text moved because the grips were actually a part of it. And when you get rid of grips, the text tries to center itself for where it's supposed to be. So I can move my text underneath the office again, and there we go. But if I continue to move grips, you'll notice that the text will move too. I'll actually show you right now. Yeah, so you saw how that text moved when I got rid of that one. So let's click on the undo button. And this is how we can use dynamic fill to calculate this really difficult rounded corner and lines that are not perfectly straight on the cardinal directions. So this one, for example, this wall is slanted a bit. So dynamic fill can help us calculate it very quickly. If I did it without explaining it to you guys, I would basically do it very quick. I'm actually going to show you how quick dynamic fill could be used. So you guys can time me at home, put your stopwatches on. I've already started, I'm cheating. Sorry guys, don't tell anybody, okay? It's our secret. I've now got my boundary ready. I'm just gonna fill in. There it is. Beautiful, I am done. Oh my God, there's a mistake right here. That's okay. We'll make another area, really simple. Click on apply. And now we have to fix our mistakes, don't we? We always have to in life. So this area is a bit of an issue, so I just need to hold the shift key and click on these as I go. I'm gonna add one more grip to make sure that I have this rounded area like that. Beautiful, and there. So what did your soft watches say? About a minute or so, maybe a little bit less. So that's how we can use dynamic fill to make an area that would otherwise take me probably 2-3 minutes, about twice as long as it would take manually. So very nice, and that's how dynamic fill works. So it's a really, really cool tool. All right, let's go back to our PowerPoint presentation. Let's see what's next. Sketch to scale tools. Awesome, these are great. I made a tutorial on these, but now you guys get to see the tutorial firsthand. So, sketch to scale tools. Let me close up all my side panels so we don't get confused and distracted. So, our sketch to scale tools can be found by going to the tools dropdown, sketch to scale, and we have all 4 of these options right here. You can also see them in my shortcuts up here. So, they basically have an orange ruler set or an orange border around them. That's how you can tell that they're different from the regular tools. Because we do have polygon tools. If I go to measure, here's the polygon one. Oops. Yeah, we have the polygon cut out right here, and we have a poly length, for example. So in sketch to scale, we have the polyline sketch to scale, which is similar to the markup polyline. So we have this polyline, these rectangles and ellipses. So basically the polyline, rectangle, ellipse, and polygon tools also have a sketch to scale option. So that's how they work. Let's make one now. Let's make a polygon first. And what we can do here is we can basically set our sides and set everything ready. So I'm gonna now, let me turn off my snap to markup, because you see all these leader lines here. It's trying to get me to snap to the same plane that these are all in. So I'm gonna click on this button right here to turn it off. There we go, now these leader lines are gone. So I can click once, and now look at that. Doesn't this remind you of dynamic input from AutoCAD? And that's basically exactly what it is. So I can start to say how long I want this segment to be and what angle it's supposed to be. So I want this to be exactly 20 feet. I'm going to press the tab key to switch to rotation. I want it to be set to exactly 45 degrees. And now I click enter. If I wanted to end the segment, I would then click enter immediately. If I move my mouse though, and then if I click enter again, then I have just made the segment wherever my mouse was. So a lot of people get confused and they think that they're done with their segment. And then they're like, uh-oh, I can just press enter, 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 enter. Oh no, what do I do now? So let's press escape. Let's do that one more time. We're going to sketch to scale, polygon. Let's make it again. I'm going to type in 20 feet, tab, 45, enter. Next, I want to go 10 feet to the right, which means a rotation of 0 degrees is adequate. Enter. And now I want to go down. Let's say we want to go down 15 feet. And how we go down is our rotation. You can see right now it's in the negatives. So all I have to do is type in, well, tab first. There we go. And then just type in -90. And there it is. I'm going straight down. Enter. And now I can press enter one more time. Because it's a polygon tool, it'll automatically fill it in. If I was using the polyline tool, then it would not fill it in. It would just be a segment instead of a shape. And there we go. Now I have this perfect polygon with segments that are perfect. And we can see information about this by going to properties. Here is the square footage of this polygon. So polygons have square feet. Polylines have a length associated with them. And we can modify these further. We can change their color, just like we could before. We can even put a hatch inside of them. So if I wanted to have this brick hatch inside, there it is. Pretty cool stuff. So then we can show segment values if we wanted to. So each segment can have its own value. The overall square footage can be shown by clicking on show caption. Centroid, look at that. What this does is this actually shows the exact center of your polygon. So no matter how irregular it is, like this one's a pretty odd four-sided figure, right? And we've got this X right here to show us exactly where the center is if you need to know. And if you turn on snap to markup right here, then you can snap to it. So I'll just draw a line and I can snap to any part of this X that I want to. So I can go from the direct center of this polygon anywhere I want. I could actually make some really cool shapes like that. And now you guys can apply these options to so many different possibilities when you're working. So let's click on this again. We're going to get rid of our centroid. Segment value is a little bit busy. We don't need them right now. And that's it. That is the first sketch to scale tool. The other ones are very similar, but let me show you how they work. Rectangle is pretty simple. All we have to do is just click, and instead of making individual segments, it's automatically a rectangle. Usually you would have to click and hold to make a rectangle, but instead I just clicked once because it has to be a rectangle. We can specify the width, so I'm going to say 10 feet. I'm going to press the tab key. The height, I want it to be 15 feet. And the rotation, we can leave it at 0 and just have a rectangle like this, or let's rotate it 45 degrees. And there we go. There's a rectangle rotated at 45 degrees with a 10-foot and a 15-foot segment. And that's how the rectangle one works. So you can make exact, accurate measurements with these sketch to scale tools. Let's look at the ellipse one really quick. Don't worry, it's not just an ellipse tool, although that is quite nice. Whoops, looks like mine remembered that last time I pressed the shift key, so mine is making perfect circles. If I press the shift key again, or control key, excuse me, now I can make an ellipse. So you'll notice that the dynamic input, as I like to call it, is changing when I press control. Right now, it only has a radius because I pressed it to change between the ellipse tool and the circle tool. So I can specify a radius of 5 feet. Perfect. Now let's do that again. And I don't want to make a circle, I want to make an ellipse. So I'm going to press control. Now instead of a radius, I have a width, a height, and a rotation. Perfect. So let's make it 10 feet, and we'll make the height 5 feet, and the rotation will be, let's go 30 degrees this time. And now we can press enter. And there is a perfect ellipse rotated perfectly as well. Sketch to scale is really, really nice when you need to make perfect measurements. And there you go. So that's how you use the ellipse one / circle one. And let's do the last one, polyline, very similar to polygon, but of course it's not going to fill itself in and it will measure length. Let me turn off my snap to markup again. So I can click once, specify the length. So let's go 5 feet at -45. Oops, I have to press tab first. So tab, -45, enter. Next, I want to go 10 feet to the right, which just means 0-degree rotation. Perfect. And let's do one more. Let's go straight up this time. So we're going to go 15 feet up with a rotation of 90. Press enter and press enter one more time. Make sure that you press enter twice if you want to finish the segment, because if you move, then you will make the line wherever your cursor is, just like I showed you guys with the polygon tool. So I'm going to press enter again, and there's my segment. Looks like a nice little, so to speak. And there it is. When I click on it and I go into properties, it says 30 feet. I can show my segment values, so each one can have visible values if I want to, and the overall caption can also be visible too. We have a lot of different ways of visually demonstrating these tools and a lot of different ways to quantify them and make sure that we get all the info we need from our polyline sketch to scale tools along with the other sketch to scale tools. And there we go. That is sketch to scale. Really, really cool stuff. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. Let's see what's next. Viewports. Awesome. And we are nearing the limit. So let's look at viewports really quickly. I'm going to open another file now, and I'm going to show you something that happens really commonly amongst a lot of my clients. So I'm going to click on this floor plan that I made in a CAD program, and I convert it into a PDF. And a lot of you might have seen this dialog. This document contains untitled viewports, which will, not may, will definitely interfere with calibration or measurements. Do you want to remove them? Let's say that I said yes, that's great, and I can calibrate and everything will be good. And let's say I said no. So I just said no right now, and I want to make a calibration right now. I want to check the scale. Let's see, we have some nice existing measurements. Let's use this let's actually use this 4-foot one right here. So I'm going to click on my calibrate tool, excuse me, selecting 2 points. Whoa, my screen just went all blue just now. Look at that. Isn't that weird? Here, let me try that again to show you guys. When you click on the length tool, it does that, excuse me. Wow, why is it all blue? That's strange. Maybe there's a viewport in the way. We're going to click on calibrate, and let's click on this point here and this point there. I'm going to say that it is custom. It is 4 feet, and I'm going to apply my scale with a precision of 1/16. Apply. Now, let's test and make sure that it worked. I'm going to make a length tool. I'm going to draw on top of it. And what is this length? Let's go into properties and see. This time it came out to 4 feet because it turns out that the viewport was was the same as the scale. But most of the time, you guys will, I've seen a lot of clients who get frustrated because they'll make a length measurement after calibrating and it won't be the same, and they don't know why. And that's because viewports dictate what the scale is, not calibrations. calibrations are secondary to viewports. So if I zoom out here, we can see that so many different parts of the screen are blue. We have this word untitled here, untitled, untitled. Wow, there's like 3 of them. That must mean that we have 3 viewports. How can we see how many viewports we have? Just like I showed you guys in the earlier part of the webinar, we can go to our measurements panel, and here we go. All 3 viewports are right down here. Let's select this one. Now only that one is visible, and we can now modify it. So if I wanted to, I can right click on top of it, but you'll notice that that's not the way to modify it, because now I've deselected the viewport and I have the regular right click dialog. This one does not allow me to really modify whatever I clicked on. Let's click on it again. And this time we have some options that appear at the bottom, one of which is delete viewport. So we can click on that, and that one is now gone. The next one is right here, and we have this one right here. So each of these floor plans had viewports. So I'm going to click on this one. I'm going to delete it. And let's say that I really like this one. This one's great. I'm going to give it a name. So I can rename the viewport. I can call it floor plan 1 and click on OK. And there we go. Now we can see floor plan 1 instead of untitled right here in the upper right. You'll notice the text continues to resize itself as you zoom in on it. So a viewport is not really meant to be a markup. It's more of an area that you designated to have a specific scale. So how can they be useful? Let's go back to our floor plan and I'll show you. You might have noticed that I had a viewport right here in the upper right. And here you can see that I've called it detail 3/4 inches. If I click on it, now my viewport is selected. You can see the scale of the viewport. You can change a viewport scale by looking at the bottom area right here in the measurements panel. You can change its preset. You can calibrate a viewport if you wanted to and give it a custom scale if you wanted to. So how do viewports work? What are they useful for? So I'm going to make a length measurement again. I'm going to make the exact same one that I made earlier. I'll make it right down here this time. And this time I'm going to move the length measurement into the viewport. So length measurement is ready. I'm going to click on it and let's move it. Now let's move it partially inside. Seems like nothing happens. You can't really see the viewport right now, but if I click on it here, you can see that it's halfway inside and the measurement hasn't changed. If I fully encompass the measurement in the viewport, now it does. Because the scale is set to 3/4 inch, this length measurement is now 5 feet instead of 30 feet. And so that's how viewports can help us basically have different scales all over our sheet. And we can change our length measurements as well, and they'll automatically change. So this is the power of viewports and how we can use them to customize the way that all of our length measurements work. And not just length, of course. This is for all of the different measurements. Areas will change, volumes will change, everything changes in a different viewport. So that's how we can use our viewports. And that's it. And now you guys know how to get rid of untitled viewports, so to speak. I've gotten rid of all of mine here, so I can make my calibration and everything will be perfect. And that's how it works. Yeah, this one's probably 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. I think that's why that it didn't come out incorrect. So I got lucky. All right. And I believe that is it. We are right on the money. We've got a little bit of time for questions. So I would love to answer your questions. Do we have any questions, Raquel?
Yes, I'm here. I was unmuting myself. Thank you so much for a great presentation. It was awesome. I saw that you threw there some tips and tricks. I hope that the people took advantage of those tips and tricks as well. We have some questions, yes. The first question, let me go straight to it, is there a way to set multiple sheets at once with a different vertical than horizontal scale?
Oh,
with my experience, you can only set same horizontal on all sheets and not vary the vertical.
Very interesting. I haven't had to deal with that yet. Let's look at it quickly. I wonder if there's a way. So we can do a separate vertical scale. We have the option right here in our measurements panel. So if I click that on, then that means that I can now do an X scale and I can calibrate that independently, and I can calibrate a Y scale independently. I think this should be able to answer your question. So now you should have a different scale in the vertical and horizontal axis. Very interesting. I didn't even know that was possible. I'm glad that you asked that. But yeah, I think it should be as easy as that. Yeah. We can test this, but I think I'll let you guys test it. Yeah, I can apply a preset to one. I can do a custom for the other one. So I think that now with Revu 2019, we should be able to do each of them independently and not just the X horizontal one. So I think that should answer your question.
Excellent. Hey, we are learning every day, especially with our customers. Yes. Thank you for that question. Okay, next one is, and you guys keep sending the questions right our way. The next one is, can you email this presentation? I missed most of it today. Yes. At the beginning, I said that we are recording it, so we can send that to you, so for future viewing. So definitely yes. Thank you for asking. Can you change precision of area readout? That's the next one.
Yes. So I have my areas right here. I've set them to 4 decimal places. So I can click on this area, and in the measurements panel, let me actually make sure that my scale is not independent. Give me 1 second. I'm not going to separate them. There we go. And our precision can be changed. Let me see if this is the right place for it. There it is. So this is set to 1/16, which is essentially 4 decimal places. If I change it to 1/2, then now it only has 1 decimal place. So this is the way that you change the precision right here. I know it's showing fractions and I have decimals here, but you can modify that as well. So yeah, basically I can start to change how these look, and I can make them have multiple decimal places. And I believe that we can go up to 4 decimal places, it seems. It looks like 1/16 and 1/32 are the same. And it also looks like 1/2 and 1/4 are also the same. Interesting. There might be more ways to modify this, and I'm going to look into that and I'll follow up with you. Very good question.
All right, thank you. Okay, so next one is, can you snap to other measurements?
Yes. So as you guys were seeing, I was trying to avoid snapping to some measurements and some leaders. What you need to do first is you need to go to your tools dropdown, toolbars, make sure that your status bar is turned on. I think in every presentation I tell people to turn on the status bar. I don't know why it's not on by default. It's such a useful bar. Really, really a great toolbar. That status bar is found down here. So we have all of these options right down here. And the one that you're looking for is snap to markup. So when I turn that on, now I can take any tool. I'm just going to take the line tool, for example, and I can snap to the exact corner of this markup, and I can go from markup to markup or anywhere else I want. So there we go. And you can see that I'm using these grips. I have basically nearest grips, endpoint grips, midpoint is right here, and there we go. I can now snap perfectly to the midpoints of these markups right here. So yep, good question.
All right, thank you. Okay, so the next one is it possible to combine measurements together?
Yes, it definitely is. So what we can do is we can take not only markups, but measurements as well. We can select them. So I'm going to select this one. If I want to select multiple markups, instead of holding Control like you would do in Windows or in other programs, we're going to hold the Shift key. That's how it works in Bluebeam. So I'm going to click on these 4 right here. I'm going to right click on top of them, and I'm going to mouse over Group, or click on Group, excuse me. And now there's not the selection marquee is all around them instead of just around each one individually. They're all part of the group. So if I move one of them, they all move together. And if we go to properties, I can modify their properties that they share at the same time. So if I want to change their font all at once, I can change it. So here I'll just change it to this one. Oh, that's a cool one. Look at all those funny symbols. Wow. And here, let's change it to this one. There we go. And so all of them are changing because all of them have a font to change. If they didn't have a font, then this would be a different story, and some of them would not even have the option. So that's a great thing that you can do. You can change all of their colors all at once, for example. So let's change in the fill color. There we go. And so that's how you can group all of your measurements. Let me undo this a couple times. And are there any other questions?
Yes. What's the difference between the length tool and the dimension tool?
Oh, yes. Good question. Let me show you guys. So I showed you the length tool earlier. We can go to our tools drop down, measure, and here's length. But if we go to markup, we have this dimension right here. And I think I talked about this last week, but it's a good question to ask again. So how this works is basically the dimension tool is useful, but it is not really a length measurement, and it's more of a visual aid. So I'm going to put this here. Notice that my cursor is allowing me to type now. So it doesn't automatically determine what length it is. So scales are not associated with this dimension tool. So I can type in any dimension I want. For example, if I want to tell somebody, make this, this 20 feet, and I press escape, now this looks like a length tool, but I put in any text that I wanted to. So you can basically put in custom text for this. You can also move it independently, just like you would with a regular tool. So it looks very, very similar to the length tool, but it does not require a scale, and you can put in custom text at the top. So that's how it works.
All right. Thank you, Ari. Okay, so I don't see any more questions. Let me check one more time. No. Okay, thank you for the questions. Before I let you all guys go back to your daily routines, Ari, thank you once more for the great presentation and answering the questions. That was awesome. We want to remind you that this is the third week of our Tuesdays with DDS CAD virtual learning series. So we have our last final session next Tuesday. So we hope to see you again, or invite all of your friends that are, or people you know that are interested, July 28 at 2 p.m. Okay, so also our blog is live. It's been live for a while. Check it out. We have all cover presentations there, very different topics. So I'm sure that you're going to find some topics that you will be interested in. If you have any questions at all about our Bluebeam review training, which is available, or about any other thing, you can email us at info@ddscad.com. You can call us. If you're used to call us and talk to somebody, you can call us as usual. I want to emphasize that if you have any topics that you would like to have covered in our future presentations, don't hesitate to let us know. You can email to us, you can call us and let us know. We will be more than happy to present those topics you are interested in the future. Another thing I wanted to emphasize is that if you guys have the licenses and you do not have maintenance on it, maintenance gives you the next version for free. So make sure that you check on that if you're interested in getting the new version with all these great features. Let us know if you have any questions about it, and we can go by case. Okay, I think I covered it all, Ari. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Ari. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.